By this time, he got already 5,000 grafts extracted from his donor area total, 3,000 with 2 FUEs and another 2,000 with 3 FUTs. Hey, this is Matt. Welcome back to the video. Glad you tuned in because today we have some very unique case to discuss. It was one of my subscribers who has done 3 FUT and 3 FUE surgeries over the last 15 years, and overall he got 6,000 grafts extracted. Can you imagine that? 6 surgeries, 6 hair transplants. Probably you don't know many people who have done it. So make sure you stay tuned, like this video right now before we continue and discuss what was good, what was bad about this whole case and evaluate his result. And as always, shout out to our sponsor GoFiber. These are hair building fibers you can use to mask any thinning or patchy areas on your scalp to make your hair look thicker and better. So make sure you check out the link in the video description below where you can visit GoFiber, get a free sample of your choice and try them out, see if you like them. Hey, welcome back to the channel once again. This is the channel where you go if you want to keep your hair, if you want to avoid being the bald guy for life, if you want to do something about your hair loss, keep that hair thick and get that hairline to the next level with a hair transplant so you look sharp, slick, young and attractive. So subscribe right now before we move to the content of this video. If you want, I can help you and assist you one-on-one with your hair transplant planning, choosing the right doctor. If you go to a link in the video description below which says one-on-one call with Matt, I'm gonna be happy to help you out. Now let me start with the evaluation of my subscribers' hair transplant journey. If you want me to evaluate your hair transplant or multiple surgeries, how it was done, the bad and good of your outcome, make sure you Instagram me or you email me or whatever, send me your photos so I can take a look at them and also share them here on YouTube without showing your face, just what I think and what was good, what was bad. Moving on to the subscriber of mine who has done 2 FUTs, guys. He started with 2 FUTs in 2005 and 2006, and each FUT was about 500 grafts. Now, what you can see right here on this photo, this is already after his 2 FUTs, as we can see. We can notice him being like a Norwood 5 before with some diffuse thinning. So maybe you are asking, like, what has been actually covered with this hair transplant? Well, before, his hairline looked like this. Okay, that was the existing hair. You know, there was some hair at the crown area, but what you can see here, this is all transplanted, like most of it. You know, this thing here, which is very thin for it to be like a hairline. It's very thin looking, and also the design hasn't been done correctly, because they only did like 500 grafts per surgery. So if you do such a small FUT, you should ideally design the hairline close to the existing hair. You shouldn't go so far from the existing hair like this, because if you want to do that, it's better to do like at least 2,000 grafts or 2,500 grafts, so the whole frontal third will have somewhat good density. Anyways, they didn't do it. That was the first mistake, obviously. He also mentioned that they covered something on the crown as well with the first 2 FUTs, which again were spaced 1 year from one another, plus they were like 500 grafts per each FUT. Now, the first issue I already mentioned is like they did only 500 grafts FUT. I don't know why. The doctor was probably not very skilled. He just wanted to test the waters. It was also 2005, 2006, and it was very hard to find a good doctors back in the days with no social media. So now the unfortunate thing is the scar, everybody. Okay, this is unfortunate because this shows that the doctor didn't do his job properly. This shows definitely signs of faulty surgical technique during the closure of the scar, because this is again the follicular unit strip surgery, where they take the tissue with the follicles and then these follicles will be then dissected under microscope and then they will be transplanted. This is not FUE, where they take the follicle one by one from the donor, just so you know. And for 2 FUTs, 500 grafts for FUT, this is a huge scar. This should not be happening, okay? And again, this is a faulty technique usually, and it's a mistake of the doctor. The scar that you get after 500 grafts should be very minimal. It should be pencil-like, and such scar should definitely not be that long. Here we can also notice that even though the scar is there, it's looking more pencil-like also here compared to this patient. Okay, this is faulty technique, unfortunately. Okay, and we'll need correction later on, but we will come back into it. So now what we can see on the left, this is how a normal FUT scar usually looks like. You know, it's about this wide, but this is already too wide. And this is no shock loss. This is already after 2 years since his both FUT surgeries, so this is no shock loss, because obviously there can be also a degree of shock loss in the donor zone after FUT, but this is already permanent. Okay, sometimes it happens if doctor misestimates the laxity of patient's donor and takes too much tissue because he wants to do many grafts, so he takes too much tissue from the donor, and then the scar widens as a result of that, and maybe the laxity of the patient is worse than the doctor expected, and that causes that spread of the scar. But in this case, again, it was just 1000 grafts FUT in 2 sessions, so there is no reason why the scar should be so wide. So during this time of 2005 and 2006, when patient got his 2 FUT surgeries, he was also on finasteride, which is a good thing. Until 2010, he stops with finasteride because he will have a baby. We see another FUT. He's getting another FUT of 1000 more grafts. And this is right after the surgery, as you can see. So all these here, you know, these scabby looking dots, these are like freshly placed grafts. I hope you can see them. It's very hard to count whether it is 1000 or not, especially if they are covered with long hair. And this is a no shave, where he didn't shave the recipient area. And the goal of this third FUT was to add more coverage on the frontal third. And we can also notice how finasteride is still keeping that hair in the mid-scalp pretty or fairly thick. If we look at it like from 5 years ago on this picture, we see that it's still pretty thick, if not even a bit thicker. Talking about this area right here, and also his lateral humps are still pretty preserved, okay? And that's again thanks to finasteride as well, because by this time he's already in his 30s. He's 30 years old. He got his first 2 surgeries around the age of 23, 24. Now, unfortunately, he did not show us the after photo or after result after this third FUT. We just see that right after the operation. But he mentioned that the results were good and he liked the results compared to the first 2 FUTs, the results of which he didn't like at all, especially the scarring, okay? Then he didn't do anything for like 6 years. Here we can see it right after, and this was 1500 grafts. So far, this is his largest FUE or largest hair transplant per session. And here we can see it before and after. And obviously there is some nice improvement. If we notice it again, 2010, it looked more like this, or even like that. Like if you notice the frontal third, it's looking thicker and thicker over time, but especially after this 4th hair transplant, which was the FUE of 1500 grafts, it starts looking really thick on the frontal third. So here we can see, like after 1 year since his 4th hair transplant, the FUE of 1500 grafts, the frontal third looks much better. And also one interesting thing, since he stopped finasteride in 2010 before having his children, he seemed to never resume with finasteride, and as a result of that, as a result of him not being on finasteride for like 5 years, you see that the hair in the mid-scalp, which was still pretty preserved, is pretty much gone by now, because he stopped with finasteride, okay? We'll see what will happen to these lateral humps over time, but they can also start thinning over time because of him not being on finasteride. You also notice how they tried to graft some of the follicles on the crown in the, I think it was the 1st or 2nd hair transplant as well. You notice that these look a little bit more different compared to hairs over here. So this is grafted And when the hair grows longer, it provides a little bit coverage, but not so much because it's the density of that grafted hair on the crown is pretty low. 1 year later, he decides to do another FUE of 1500 grafts, and by this time, this is his hair transplant number 5. This is FUE, and this was pretty much the area which got covered with or strengthened with the 4th hair transplant, 1500 grafts. Now, by this time, he got already 5,000 grafts extracted from his donor area total, 3,000 with 2 FUEs and another 2,000 with 3 FUTs. This is his current hair situation after 15 years since his first surgery, or even 16 years. And what he has done further, and it was another 1000 graft FUE surgery to add more density to the frontal third and also mid-scalp a little bit, but also to correct the scar. The scarring on the donor, which many of you guys will be probably curious how this looks now in 2022, 15 or 16 years after. So this is his donor area right now after 6 hair transplant surgeries and 3 of them being FUTs, and first 2 of them being very unfortunate FUTs, which created that very wide scarring appearance. And although he managed to have it repaired to the extent, and he also mentioned that he was kind of happy with the repairing of that scar tissue, we see that there are some grafts placed in this zone here, but he will still probably need a little bit more because we see that the density is still kind of low, especially here on the right. Okay, so this requires even more repairing, and this is also pretty thinned out in this area, which seems like they did maybe take a lot of grafts via FUE from that area, because it's looking more like thinned out. So maybe that's the reason. I still think he could get maybe more grafts via FUE from the sides. The sides look okay if they are longer, but I'm not sure. They will be definitely depleted if he cuts his hair short. So obviously his donor area will need even more repairing, but he will also need to decide if he wants to, take more grafts from the sides and potentially beard and use them rather for the mid-scalp and crown, or he wants to use them for repairing the donor. So he will need to compromise a lot from now on. So what were like the biggest mistakes that he has done in the past? So in my opinion, it was the 2 FUT surgeries at the beginning, which left him with the scar, which created even more emotional distress for him, and also created higher demands on more grafts from the donor to be extracted and transplanted into the scar. So it's unnecessary step that he kind of put himself into because of that big scar, and choosing a doctor that is not reliable, that was not able to do a proper closure, and wasn't even properly able to do a proper FUT back in the days in 2005 and 6. And that was like the biggest mistakes. Obviously stopping the medication after 2010 also made some of the hair on the mid-scalp pretty much thin out and disappear over the next couple years. Plus his lateral humps also started to spread over time. As you can see here on the photo from 2021, we see that it's already looking more like Norwood 6 if he hadn't done any surgery, compared to maybe 2016, where it still looked more like Norwood 5. Maybe here in 2010 it looked like Norwood 5, but because of stopping the medication, the balding areas started to spread. So that was another mistake. So the lack of information on credible doctors back in the days caused him to make these decisions, obviously. And even today, I think there are many guys who still go too crazy with the FUEs, and I think these cases will be considered unsuccessful several years later because of that donor, which will be permanently over-harvested and thinned out, and the scarring will be obvious. And if patients also stop with medication or never go on medication, we'll notice, guys, in maybe 5-10 years from now, we will see an epidemic of cases with over-harvesting on the donor and islands of hairs in the frontal third and nothing behind. So actually, this is something we can still witness in the next coming years, with all of these FUE cases coming, especially from Turkey, from these low quality clinics where 2,000 surgeries are being performed only in Turkey every single day. So it's pretty crazy to see, and I think we will notice something similar with guys who are starting with FUEs and do high graft FUEs already per session with unskilled technician force, and this is what we will see. The only thing he can do is to slowly but steadily extract more grafts from the sides, but be very careful and do only small FUEs with some body hair, maybe chest hair, and maybe repair a little bit of the donor and add what's possible on the mid-scalp and crown to add more coverage. That's pretty much it. He's already very close to depletion, to total depletion of the donor, because 6,000 grafts have been already extracted from it overall. It's good that he combined it with FUT, that kind of can increase that total capacity of the donor by an average guy a little bit higher, maybe 1,500 grafts higher, but also not more than that. So yeah, that was pretty much it from me on this case. Let me know what you want to know next time, or what case would you like me to cover. If you want, I can cover your case as well by sharing your photos to my email or Instagram. I can do a similar evaluation for you for free in exchange of you providing us some photos which I can comment on without showing you your face, obviously. And if you want, I can help you out one-on-one during my one-on-one consultations, where I help you choose the best doctor, help you evaluate different alternatives from different doctors, help you achieve the best result you can get, and also the hairline that is not just thick and dense, but the hairline that is not going to be detectable, because there are many hairlines nowadays where we see that are looking very strong and full and thick, but these are the hairlines that can be actually very easily detectable. So we also want that hairline which is pretty undetectable. Maybe the best surgeons in the world will detect it, but maybe not even them. So if you want that whole package, all questions answered before your transplant, what things to look for, pitfalls to avoid during your hair transplant research, I'm the right guy to talk to. And if you want that, make sure you get on a one-on-one call with me. The link is in the description below. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to see you in another video. Take care.